The next game on our list is the New York Jets traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Both teams 1-2 coming into this game, and this matchup has to be headlined by the quarterbacks. Obviously, the returning Zach Wilson is big to talk about here. He comes back after missing the first 3 games of the season. Joe Flacco came in and did what he had to do, kept this Jets team afloat at 1-2. Wilson now comes in. Aaron, what do you expect to see from him this season?
I mean, there's going to be the struggles. He's a young quarterback. He's still going to make bad throws, but I think the elusiveness, the escapability, the ability to get in and out of the pocket and make throws to guys that are going to continue to run routes. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, those guys continue on their routes. They can make plays when something goes unscripted, when it's, hey, he's running for his life because the offensive line doesn't hold up, or when Pittsburgh's bringing that pass rush. I think that's the biggest thing here. You also have to keep an eye on Minkah Fitzpatrick. If Minkah Fitzpatrick is not in this game, I think that bodes well for Zach Wilson and those receivers. But there's going to be struggles. Like, Zach Wilson is going to be talked about as one of these guys that's, hey, he's not it. He's not it, because he's going to have times where he does look like that. But I've always told people, be patient with certain guys. Be patient with Zach Wilson, because it was a new scheme, a new system last year. He got banged up a little bit, got banged up this year, hasn't had a chance to develop. You have to give guys a chance to develop, especially when they're that raw like Zach Wilson was. The talent is not questioned. The arm talent, the ability to move in and out of the pocket. People speak very highly of his ability. Now it's going to take a coach to put him in the right situations to make him successful. And I think that's what I'm looking for the most. And I think over time he will. And I think this is a tough game to come back to at Pittsburgh on the road against a tough Mike Tomlin team that no matter what, they're going to fight. Like, it doesn't matter if they're a good team or a bad team. Those games are going to be dog fights every time you play the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I expect one of those in this game as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what you get from the Pittsburgh Steelers every game, a Mike Tomlin-led team. But the way Joe Flacco played for the Jets, does that have anything to do that? Like, does that affect anything at all with Zach Wilson coming in? Like, Joe Flacco was near the top of the league in passing yards in the NFL, and he didn't do bad. That doesn't carry into Zach Wilson, does it? No, you shouldn't be thinking about that when comparing Zach Wilson. Like, in my head, I can already see it now. If Zach Wilson comes out the gate, first 2 games struggles, people are going to be like, we did better with Joe Flacco. Why not? Let's put him back in. Like, Zach Wilson just ain't it. Like, I feel like that's going to be something that gets brought up. What do you have to say to that if that ends up being the case?
Nothing. I wouldn't waste my time. I'm not going to argue with anybody over Joe Flacco, age 30, whatever, about whether he should be the quarterback or Zach Wilson. If you're going to waste my time and asking me questions about Joe Flacco over Zach Wilson, then you're not watching football. You're not paying attention to the landscape of football, what needs to be done. Nobody's benching their number 2 overall pick after he's already been a starter for a year for some 35, 36. I don't even know how old Joe Flacco is at this point. Guy that had a couple of good games. Like, Joe Flacco is a very serviceable backup, and that's what he is. This is the Ryan Fitzpatrick argument. And I know Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl, but that was many moons ago. That was a decade ago. Like, we gotta move on from that. So he didn't look great last week. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's been a couple of good games, but it's Joe Flacco. No, there should be no question. It should be Zach Wilson. Let them go through the growing pains. Let your young team grow and get better and experience these hard times and these games where they can't quite win because he throws a pick or whatever. Let him experience that and then find out if he's your franchise or not. And if he's not, guess who's not your franchise? We know, Joe Flacco. You're just going to be in the draft looking for another guy. So the answer is definitely not Joe Flacco. He's not on the sideline over there.
Yeah, no, that's 100% agree. And I see a comment from our guy Ron Vroman in here. He brought up the fact that the offensive line needs to protect Zach Wilson. That offensive line is banged up. George Fant left Sunday's game, obviously without Mekhi Becton. Dwayne Brown is also injured. Like, that offensive line is banged up, so it's going to be very hard to protect Zach Wilson this week against Steelers defensive line and Steelers pass rush. Although without TJ Watt, they're still very good. So it might be a tough game for Zach Wilson. On the other side of this, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's also coming back to the quarterback question. Mitch Trubisky has not been blowing teams out of he has not been amazing people. And the question has been out there of when do you put Kenny Pickett in? If the Steelers lose this game, is this the last chance for Mitch Trubisky, or you think that the leash is still a little bit, there's still some leash to go with Mitchell Trubisky?
I think there's still some leash. I don't think you're going to get a reaction from Mike Tomlin. Now, has he been good? No, not particularly good, but he hasn't been particularly bad either. Like, he's not sitting there and turning the football over. He's just not doing anything special. And so what do you think Kenny Pickett's going to do when he comes in? That's really what it's about. I think this is about an offensive line that hasn't been very good. They can't run the football. And this is something that they were supposed to address in the offseason. They added Mason Cole. They added guys on the offensive line, and they still haven't been able to block. You want to know the biggest disappointment for me? The biggest disappointment for me is Najee Harris. That's who's the biggest disappointment for me, because that is the guy you're supposed to be leaning on to carry this offense. That is supposed to be the guy you're relying on to allow Mitchell Trubisky not to have to go out and do special things, because he's not really that type of quarterback. And instead, when you bring in James Daniels and Mason Cole and these guys, and they don't pan out and they're not blocking, now you have a problem. Now you have something you're looking at and you're saying, okay, why is it we can't get anything going on the ground? And here we are, week 4 now, and what Pittsburgh has always been known for is running the football. And they haven't been able to run the football consistently enough. And it's been, to me, I'm not saying it's Najee Harris's fault, but it's a combination of Najee Harris and that offensive line combined. I have serious concerns about them from that standpoint.
Yeah, the Steelers ranked 25th in the league in terms of rush attempts per game. So they're not really giving the ball to Najee that much, because of that offensive line not being able to hold up enough to make things happen. It was similar to last year. It's just Najee Harris was just fed the ball so much last year. And we talked about in the offseason that this you might not get the same amount of touches for Najee Harris this year. It obviously was not going to happen, because
I will say, like, it's not that he's not getting the ball. He's not efficient. And this was my argument. We had this conversation the other day about Javonte Williams versus Najee Harris, and offensive line obviously plays a role in this. But the efficiency of it, the first game, yeah, he only had 10 carries, got 23 yards though. 2.3 a carry, not going to cut it. Game 2, 15 for 49, 3.2 yards a carry, not going to cut it. And then 15 for 56, 3.7 yards a carry. Like, he's not even getting to the 4-yard per carry mark. It's inefficiency. And as a coach, when you're an inefficient running team, you tend to get away from the running game. You're like, man, we can't run it. The difference between teams like the Steelers and the Bills don't run it a lot, but when they give the ball to their the ball to the running backs, it's 4, 5, 6 yards to carry, right? Because they're effective on offense. You have to be effective in the running game. It doesn't have to be the volume all the time, but when you do run it, you have to be effective if you're not going to run it a lot. And right now, their most effective back has been Jaylen Warren, because of his ability to be explosive, and Najee's not as explosive as Warren. And then they don't give him the ball either. So the running game is a huge concern for why the Steelers cannot use those weapons on the outside, because nobody cares. Nobody's stacking the box against Pittsburgh, because they can stop you with their front 7. And then they just cover Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and Pickens and say, okay, Mitchell Trubisky, you have to be special. And he can't do it.
Yeah, putting too much on someone who's not going to be able to do all that much. So you're saying not Kenny Pickett time yet, even if they lose this game?
I don't think it's about wins and losses. I never thought this Kenny Pickett thing would be about wins and losses until it comes to a point they're eliminated. I think it's going to be about the play of Mitchell Trubisky. And I know he's not completing a lot of passes, but you watch the games and you're like, okay, Mitchell's playing like
he's not losing you. He's not losing you the game. It's just, when does it get to a point where you're saying, okay, he's not losing us games, but he's also not helping us win games. And maybe Kenny Pickett can come in and do that. But I agree with you. I think it comes in later. I don't think this game is the final straw for Mitch Trubisky just yet. But I do think we're starting to really plant the seeds to Mitchell Trubisky losing this job eventually in the season. I do have the Steelers winning this one, though. I think the Steelers take care of the Jets. I like Mike Tomlin in this game being the difference maker in play calling and the way this team is run. Give me the Steelers here, 19-14.
Yeah, I too think it's going to be a defensive game. I am going to take 21-17. I'm going to take I want to take the Jets so bad. I'm going to take the Jets. I'm going to take the Jets. Yeah, I watched Pittsburgh against Cleveland. Wasn't excited. If Minka Fitzpatrick doesn't play, I like the weapons of the Jets. Give me Jets 21-17.
Okay. All right. I like picking the Jets. It's always fun when you pick the Jets because they're a fun team to watch. They're a fun team to root for. But Mike Tomlin gets the job done. Tyler's got the Jets here. And Tyler, you got to get your scoring right. Okay, you got to get your scoring predictions right here, buddy. I'm going to say this now. If you're watching, you got to get your scoring predictions right. The 35-21 Jets is his prediction. Ain't no way the Jets are scoring 35 points in this game. You can host the show next week, all next week, if the Jets score 35 points on the Steelers. Bailey has the Steelers up 20-14 on the Jets. That's how he has it. So 2 Jets picks, 2 Steelers picks. That's how it's done here in the city for Jets, Steelers.